Welcome to week 8. Can you believe we're that far into the season? We're starting to see some new treasures. So look what's coming, just beginning to come out of the greenhouse. Some of the tomatoes. Thank you, Liz. And we've got salad cucumber and lettuce, kale, zucchini. Are you guys getting to be experts at all the things you can do with zucchini yet? We've got some carrots that look like nice lunch nosh. A nice crown of broccoli. Some of our potatoes are starting to come forward. And celery. Oh, and this is a very happy thing. For all of those of you who remember our amazing glut of plums we had about 3 or 4 years ago, the trees are back to producing. We didn't have a frost this year, so they're just starting. So there'll be a few plums in the box, possibly, depending on the size of the box that you purchased. This week, I thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the strategies that took place in the Irish household because our week was not our own, and we were not home as much as we planned. So, not wanting to waste anything, we quickly triaged. I took all the broccoli that I had accumulated and I blanched it and froze it. So it's all ready for meals in a couple months when I feel like that's when we're going to make soup or we're going to do a stir fry. This week I thought I'd take you through what we do in the Irish household when it's high garden season, because not only do I get the bounty from Jubilee, but I also have a garden of our own. This is the time of the year we start to put up green beans. So I'm going to show you how Ken and I put them up so that they are available for meals later on in the winter. And I also thought I might do a quick run through and show you how I make kraut. I made some this week and I held some back so I can just show you how I go about it. It's not hard. You just need a clean place to work and a scale so you can measure the weight of the cabbage once you've got it prepared. So though those are things that aren't in your box this week necessarily, I thought this is the season. So if you have those things available or you've got leftover cabbage, you can turn it into kraut. So we'll talk about those. So welcome back to our kitchen. We thought we'd go through a few strategies we use in our kitchen preparing for winter. Because if you've noticed, being a member of CSA, if you're new, things come in large quantities sometimes. And if they do, rather than worrying about having to eat through it all in one week, tuck a few things away in the freezer for meals later on. Right now it's green bean season around our house, and a dear friend of mine brought all of these. And so I thought what I would do is show you the method that we use. I like it because it's my version of quick meal in the wintertime, and it's a way to tuck away onions and green beans in very small packets. So a quart Ziploc bag will hold quite a few green beans, but we don't just steam them and then throw them in the freezer whole. They take a lot of space that way, and I don't really like eating frozen beans this size. I love them when they're fresh, but not frozen. We put them through a Frencher, so they kind of look like pasta. Those of you who have been down at the barn have seen me use it. Here it is right here. Ken can get a picture of it. See how my high-tech process? I put it on a chair on the butcher block in our kitchen. And then this is a fun job for kids. You can run them through. Yes, it seems arduous, but you know what? If you've got to caramelize those onions anyway, you got to be near the stove. So you can put 1 or 2 through your bean Frencher. Mine is old, so I nurse it along with just 1. I can go through a 5-gallon bucket in about 40 minutes. And you know, that's a lot of time, but if you think about all the meals you just prepared for winter, it's not. But it leaves a frozen product with lots of flavor and nutrition and really great mouthfeel. When the kids were still home, I would stir it into spaghetti, pasta, pesto kinds of things, and it was almost like having a summer meal. So mouthfeel, again, is important. But that's what it looks like. And then later on, I'm going to show you how once I've got all those beans Frenched, then I will steam them from the appropriate amount of time, and then we'll cool them, and I'll show you my method of quick cooling them. I don't put them in water. And then we are going to mix those, once those are cooled, with caramelized onions. So if you're going to start the process, start the caramelized onions because they take about an hour. This is 3 medium-sized, just yellow cooking onions, and maybe a heavy quarter cup, maybe a third of a cup of olive oil. And we slowly cook them down. Every now and then, if I think they're getting too warm, I'll put a little water in them and let them cook back some more. But by the time I'm done, they're going to look like onion marmalade. So we'll get back to this in a few minutes. This is what 3 large, medium-large onions look like after they've been caramelized slowly for about an hour. And the handy part about this process is you're near the stove, you can keep poking at them, add water as necessary till they get this rich golden color, and then turn the heat off. And now you're ready to start steaming these. And we've got our steamer going, and I'm going to move a few things off the stove so you can see more readily what we're going to do, and we'll be back in a minute. Here's our little nest of caramelized onions, which once the green beans have been steamed and cooled will get folded through the entire mass, and then we'll bag and freeze them. Here is the bowl of beans once they've been Frenched, and here's my steamer. Take a peek and I'll show you how much I loaded. I don't want to overload it. No more than that. We cover it and we put the timer on for 3 minutes. Use a timer, you guys. It's so easy to get distracted and overcook them, and you don't want to do that. So we're steaming them, or you can blanch them if you're more comfortable with that, because we want to fix those enzymes that would otherwise degrade the vegetable in the freezer. So don't skip this part. It's really important if you want to have a good quality, enjoyable, nutritious packet of vegetables come December or January. Here's the timer. We're going to grab the colander. And the green beans have just been steamed. They haven't been blanched. We're going to let them cool quickly. We're going to put the colander back in. Put another batch in. We've just kept it on high the whole time. Time it for another 3 minutes because the water never stopped boiling. And that's how you can push that process along so it moves along quickly. And then I just spread them out on a metal cookie sheet, baking sheet, and they will cool quite quickly so you don't overcook them. Here's our second batch coming out. And I just pushed the first batch forward. So we want a quick cool. Put this back in here. So I'm taking the last batch off. And you notice that I let them cool out in the small batches, and then after they've cooled, I just push them forward. By the time you go from one batch to the next, they're cool enough to bunch up like this, so they don't overcook themselves. So we'll give this about 3 minutes to chill down, and then I'm going to take the caramelized onions and all those steamed green beans, fold them together, and let them cool all the way down. And then once they're cooled down, then I'll pack them tightly into quart bags. I think you'll enjoy these in the wintertime. I'll show you what they look like in the bags when we're done. So here's what that pile of beans looks like once I've folded all of the caramelized onions through, and I wish you could smell it. It's that wonderful sweet smell with green beans. And then we're going to spread them out so they're as thin a layer as possible so they'll continue to cool quickly. And probably in about 20 minutes I'll come back, half hour, and I'll bag them up and pop them in the freezer. Don't forget to squeeze the air out of the bags. Also, don't forget to label and date your bags so you know what's in there. So that large bowl of green beans condensed down into 5 fairly amply filled quart bags. And I just smash them flat before I freeze them so they stack readily in my freezer. And you're halfway to dinner at this point. You've got a caramelized onion. There's no salt in this, and that way whatever you're adding it to or extending or starting with, you're not worried about any of that excess. Plus you know what's in the bag. It's nutritious. It's put up fresh. You can hardly beat it. I use it. I used to use it as a pesto pasta vegetable accoutrement when the kids were home. Ken and I tend to use it in winter braises and stews. and soups more often than not. And then at Thanksgiving, of course, I'll bring 4 or 5 of these bags out. And you know how Thanksgiving is, everything at the last minute. One of these things is already done. So all I have to do is put them in a pot with a little bit of water, steam them up, put them on a tray. They don't even need more butter. They're glorious. So maybe you'll come up with an even better idea, but good luck. I'm pushing foods forward. One of the things we make in the summer, and it's really a new addition to our kitchen, is something we call vegetable marmalade. I'll probably need a better name for it. I'm taking suggestions. But here's what happens. You've got a huge thug of zucchini. Some of these are ours, some from the farm. And I don't want to have, I'm not making sauce this week, and I'm not in the mood for grilled zucchini. If I was making red sauce, I would use it. We'll talk about that later when tomatoes rev up. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel all of these. I'm going to take any pith out of them. I will julienne the meat, sprinkle it with salt in a large colander, and I'll show you what this looks like in the colander. And then I'm going to slowly cook it down in that big frying pan. I think I showed you once, but if I haven't, you're going to see the process. So we're going to use our big frying pan again, so we have a lot of surface area. It doesn't have to be this large. And you can add carrots to it, you can add onions. I think onions and zucchini are the base, and from there you can build. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of parsley or celery leaf, finely minced, but it's going to turn into this vegetable goo, because you'll have all the fiber there. You're just going to cook down all the waters and bring the sugars forward. So you may be wondering what to do with this vegetable goo once it's all cooked and you have it frozen in these 2-cup increments. Generally 1 pound of hamburger will take 2 cups of the vegetable marmalade. Defrost it the night before. It's a whole lot easier to work with. And also the same increment, 2 cups of soaked bulgur wheat, which you squeeze all the liquid out of. Mix that all together with some egg, maybe a teeny bit of salt and some black pepper. That's about it. And then you form meatballs and you bake them for about 15 minutes, and they'll be moist. They hold well for picnics if you're on car trips. And I've even made meatloaf. We don't make that very often, but I make it the same way and just bake it in a bain-marie. So you have slicing sandwich meat. But the meatballs we've discovered are much easier to make and easier to transport. So check out the recipe. It's up on the website. I'll have Ken pull it forward. We're proceeding with the product I call vegetable marmalade. This is what 2 onions look like after about 35 minutes. You just keep poking them around. You can make a smaller dice if you want the onion less noticeable. We don't care around here, but if you're cooking for kids, sometimes that's important. And then, let's turn over here, Ken, and show them what we've got going. That pile of zucchini turned into 2, that's so I don't burn the onions. That pile of zucchini that you saw on the countertop turned into 2 full food processing containers. This first one has been sweating for about a half an hour, and I'm going to start adding it to that onion mixture over there. You can see how much liquid came out. So it's pretty ample. I think I'll bring the bowl with me because I'll show you what I'm going to do. I like to squeeze even more liquid out of it as I begin to layer it on top. The more water we can get out, the better. So remember how big that pile of zucchini was. But this is the secret ingredient to really good meatballs. I was thinking too, I've been known to toss it into soups as well if I'm just a little limited on what I've got in the fridge at the moment. And it really adds depth of flavor. So we will end up cooking all of that in the same frying pan, but we won't add it all at once. We'll just add 1 processing container at a time. And then I just freeze this in 1 and 2 cup increments. And it's the secret magic that goes into a lot of stuff. So look at all that liquid we pulled off of there. So once I've got that first batch laid on top and as much moisture as possible squeezed out, then I start to turn it into those onions that are well cooked underneath, and there's a lot of fond in the pan, that wonderful caramely flavor that you get when you saute things for a long time. So all that will go into this. So this will take a while, but what you're doing is reducing the volume of your garden and CSA box down to manageable amounts for wonderful food in the wintertime, or even just later in the summertime when you're in a hurry. So we keep that on a medium low and just let it cook off the moisture. Folks, this is what it looks like. All of that zucchini, you remember that mound of zucchini? Plus 2 onions. It's all been caramelized down. It's really soft. If you could smell it, you would smell the sugars coming forward from all the vegetable. I will package this up in 2 and 1 cup increments, and then I use, like I said, I use that in different types of meatballs and meatloaf and soups. It's just a flavor starter, but it's a great way to tuck away all that nutrition and fiber in a very small space. Concentrated. Hey folks, I promised to show you how to make sauerkraut, and it comes in all forms. You know, there's the Korean version of kimchi, which has lots of spices rubbed into it before you start the fermenting process. I'm going to show you a really simple one. You can make it with regular cabbage, like we got from the farm about a week or so ago. If you've got that hanging around and you want to try your hand at cabbage, that's great. I'm making mine with a purple Napa cabbage that I grow in my garden, and I'll probably mix it with some of the green. You cut it into slices, I don't know, about an 1/8 inch thick, like so. And you just go all the way down. And I'm going to do a small batch for me. I'm only going to do 2.5 pounds of cut up cabbage. And to that end, you do need to have a scale if you want to get your percentages of weight of vegetable matter to salt accurate, so you don't oversalt or undersalt and end up with too much bad bacteria before the good bacteria wins out. So I'm going to go ahead and get this sliced up. I'm going to weigh it out, and then I'll show you the next step. So here is what 2.5 pounds of Napa cabbage looks like. I weighed it, and now I will use, let's see, 1.5 tablespoons of salt. Make sure you're using a salt that doesn't have any iodine in it, or you could have all kinds of off flavors. So cheap old canning salt doesn't have iodine in it. I like to use a good sea salt that I have hanging around the house. So I'll get that measured out and show you. But the baseline for making kraut is for every 5 pounds of sliced up cabbage, after you've cut it, weigh it, and cleaned it, then you put 3 tablespoons of salt in there, and then you massage it till you get some liquid. I'm going to use a bigger tub to do that. You remember that big bread bowl that I use when it's high green season in my refrigerator? Well, I also can use it for something like this. So I'll take this pre-measured amount in, put it in here, measure out 1.5 tablespoons, because this is only 2.5 pounds of cabbage. And that's what it looks like in the beginning, and I'll show you what it looks like after I massage it with a little salt. So I measured the salt in on top, and now I'm just gently folding it through. Napa cabbage is a little more fragile than the more hardy cabbage, ball head cabbages you might find, especially the fall cabbage. But right now I'm just going to gently fold that in, and then start massaging it a little bit, because you want to break some of the cells to get that juice to run, because that's what you're going to ferment the cabbage in. So, and you can see it getting a little more limp. Now I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes, and while it's sitting, I'm going to measure out caraway, because I decided I'd like a little put up for the German dishes we make in our family, even though it's non-traditional Napa cabbage. And rather than finding caraway seeds in my meal when I serve the kraut later on, I'm going to go ahead and put it in a little spice bag. I'm actually borrowing Ken's. He uses these for beer making, but I wash and boil them every year, so we're going to dual task them this year. So I think I'm going to put probably 1.5 tablespoons in for what I'm guessing will fill a half-gallon jar. I may be off a little bit. I always have another jar backup. And then just tie this off so that the seeds can impart their flavor but not end up a crunchy thing, unless you like that in your cabbage. So I'm going to go ahead and plop that in the jar. That's clean. And though it went through the dishwasher, I always rinse out my jars I'm fermenting in, just in case some dishwasher soap lingered. I hope it didn't, but they're kind of a weird shape, and you don't want that in there, possibly fouling your ferment. So back to what we're doing here. You can see there's starting to be a little bit of that purple juice. Those are the anthocyanins. That's why I grow the purple cabbage, just so we have a little color in our diet later in the season when the garden's not growing. You can see it starting to let go of the juice pretty quickly. If you don't have enough, which I don't think will be the problem with summer cabbage, but if for some reason you don't have enough liquid to cover it once you put it in your jar, and that's important, read the directions on the recipe. There is a recipe for a brine you can add to it, but I try not to do that. Okay, I'm going to start packing this. So I've got the caraway seeds in the bottom. You could do dill. You could just do dill fronds. That would be fine. Anything really, garlic. You could have sliced up or chunked up some onions in here if you wanted that. I wanted a really simple one with just caraway. See all that purple juice in there? It's going to go in here. And this cabbage will let go of more as it sits. And it's going to sit on our counter for 2 days before I pop an airlock on it and let it finish fermenting in the cold refrigerator. In the summer, I try to retard the ferment. I get it started on the countertop, like I said, a couple times for a couple of days. Once I start to smell a little tang, then, and this is how I push it down. I don't have any fancy tools, just clean hands, like so. What you don't want is a lot of floaty stuff. So sometimes I will take something like this to hold down the bits and pieces. I'll just cross it like that. It helps. And then I take my weight. This is all washed and clean. It's filled with water, so it displaces even more, and you can kind of push it down. Now that's going to sit on my countertop on a tray with a towel over it to pick up good bacteria. So I just throw one of my rags over the top of it like that. And that'll sit on my counter for 2 days. And then in 2 days, I'm going to put an air gap on top of it. So you can see clearly that there is liquid over the top of the vegetables. We don't want any small vegetable matter up on top. They grow yeast, then the yeast grow other things, and then it fouls your whole ferment all the way down. So keep an eye on your ferments. They have to be managed carefully the first week or so, and then once you get a good strong ferment a month in, they're a lot easier. But always keep an eye on them, because if they get a little something fouled on top, you can very carefully take a spoon and take it out, but if it goes too long and you grow fuzz, it's gone. So if you don't have enough liquid, which I don't think is going to be the case in the summertime produce, but if you don't, go back and check out the brine recipe, the recipe for brine on the kraut recipe. Let me show you what an airlock looks like if you haven't watched it on the other video. So here's what an airlock looks like. Got some vodka or something in there. I don't use water. You want to stop any potential bacteria from burping the other direction, coming back in. So you want to let gases escape once you've capped it, but you don't want it sucking anything that's floating around in your refrigerator to foul your ferment. But this doesn't go on for at least 2 or 3 days. It's pretty warm this week, so I'm going to only leave it on the counter for 2 days. And then I will put an air gap and put it in my refrigerator. Good luck! While we were waiting for all of those zucchini to caramelize in the frying pan, I took the opportunity to get dinner staged, and we're having potatoes that came from the farm and broccoli, and we're making a mustard caper sauce. Now, when you had it down at the barn, we made it with butter, because all things are wonderful with butter. But I want to serve any leftovers as a room temperature salad, so I'm deciding to go with olive oil. Either way, it's a very luscious sauce. It's got capers. We didn't have shallots, but I took some of our little onions we had a couple weeks ago that I stashed away, and I let them warm in the olive oil for a couple hours, just at a low temperature. What else? We have garlic in there and some Dijon mustard. And that's what we'll splash over the top once we get everything steamed. So I have the potatoes cubed, steaming in here. It'll take about 10 or 12 minutes. And I will fold those out into the bowl quickly, splash a little sauce on it, go back, steam the broccoli because I don't want to overdo that. And then fold the whole thing together. We have green olives we're going to put on top of that, and a splash of lemon. And that'll be dinner. Just so you're clear. Just so I'm clear, the reason I'm using olive oil is that when you let this salad come to room temperature, it feels better on your palate. Butter usually needs to be warmed up, and I don't want to do that to the salad at room temperature. Dinner's ready at the Irish's. Have a lovely week, everyone. Be good to your neighbor.